In the Middle Ages, marriages were rarely about love. They were contracts, political arrangements meant to secure land, wealth, and power. For noble families, the heart mattered little. What mattered was the bloodline. And yet, in a world ruled by cold bargains, there were still moments when the heart rebelled. One such moment created one of the most haunting legends of medieval Europe, the tragic story of the Lady of the Tower. Her name was Eleanor, the daughter of a powerful lord whose lands stretched across valleys and forests. From birth, her future had been decided. She would marry not for herself, but for her family's honor. Her father had chosen a wealthy count, a man twice her age, known for his influence at court. To the family, this match meant safety, prestige, and gold. To Eleanor, it meant a lifetime in chains. But fate had other plans. In the shadow of her father's castle lived a young knight named William. He was not rich, not powerful, but his courage in battle and kindness in spirit had made him beloved among the people. Eleanor first saw him in the courtyard when he returned from campaign. His armor was battered, his smile warm, his presence alive in a way her betrothed could never be. That glance was enough to spark what would become a forbidden fire. At first, it was only stolen moments. A look exchanged across the chapel, a smile when he bowed before her father. But soon those glances became more daring. They spoke in gardens at twilight, voices hushed, hands brushing just enough to feel the truth neither could admit. For Eleanor, every word he whispered was freedom. For William, every glimpse of her was worth the risk of death. Nights in the castle grew heavy with secrecy. By day, Eleanor sat with her needlework, pretending to be the dutiful daughter preparing for marriage. By night, she slipped through hidden corridors to meet William beneath the tower walls. There, under the pale light of the moon, they swore themselves to each other. He promised her escape, a life beyond the iron grip of family duty. She promised her heart, no matter the cost. The danger of discovery only deepened their bond. They knew the penalty for betrayal of family honor was severe. Women could be beaten, imprisoned, even executed for defying arranged marriages. Knights, too, could lose everything, their lands, their titles, even their lives. And yet, the more dangerous their love became, the harder it was to let go. Eleanor began to dream of a future with William. She imagined fleeing with him to a distant land, where no one cared about her name or dowry. He dreamed of building a home with her far from the shadow of her father's power. But in medieval Europe, dreams such as these were dangerous. For while love gave them courage, it also blinded them to the watchful eyes around them. Servants whispered of Eleanor's frequent walks at night. Guards noticed William lingering longer than duty required. Even her brother, sharp-eyed and ambitious, began to suspect that his sister's heart was no longer her own. The seed of scandal had been planted. And soon, what was once whispered under the moonlight would become a storm strong enough to destroy them both. The secret meetings between Eleanor and William grew bolder with each passing week. What had begun as fleeting glances and whispered prayers now became moments of passion stolen from the rigid order of her family's world. The young knight, though bound by oath to serve her father, now served a far greater master: his love for her. By day, Eleanor's life seemed unchanged. She appeared dutiful, attending the chapel with folded hands, working her embroidery in silence, and nodding politely when her betrothed, the Count, visited. He was a man of gray hair and calculating eyes, more interested in contracts and coin than the heart of the woman he would soon wed. To him, Eleanor was not a bride but an investment, a bond between families. To her, he was a shadow, a constant reminder of the prison awaiting her. But when the sun set and the torches dimmed, Eleanor's world came alive. Wrapped in a cloak, she crept through hidden staircases and down to the gardens, where William waited beneath the tower walls. The night air was heavy with the scent of roses, the moonlight casting silver shadows on his armor. Every time she saw him, her fear melted into joy. They spoke of freedom, of a life where titles meant nothing, where love was not a crime. William swore he would take her away. He whispered of distant lands, villages where no one knew their names, mountains where no one could reach them, ports where they could sail beyond her father's grasp. Eleanor clung to these promises as if they were scripture, her only salvation from the life chosen for her. Yet danger pressed closer with every meeting. The servants had begun to notice her absences. A maid, loyal to the family, once asked why Eleanor's shoes bore traces of dew, though she claimed to have slept. The guards, too, eyed William suspiciously when he lingered near the women's quarters after dusk. Rumors crept like ivy along the castle walls. Her brother, sharp-eyed and ambitious, was the first to voice his suspicion. He had always envied William's reputation among the people. For the knight's courage and kindness won him admiration no coin could buy. To the brother, this was intolerable, and the thought that his own sister's heart might belong to William enraged him further. He began to watch them closely, setting spies to track Eleanor's movements. Still, the lovers pressed on, blinded by hope. Every risk only deepened their devotion. Eleanor wrote secret letters on scraps of parchment, hidden beneath loose stones in the chapel wall. William carved their initials into the bark of an ancient oak near the garden, swearing that no matter what came, their bond would endure. But whispers travel quickly in castles. One evening, when William kissed Eleanor's hand beneath the cloisters, a shadow passed nearby. A servant had seen them. The next morning, Eleanor overheard hushed voices in the halls. The word shame was spoken. The word honor was repeated. And though no accusation had yet been made, she felt the walls of her father's fortress closing in. The hidden flame of their love burned brighter than ever, but with it came smoke that could no longer be hidden. The air was thick with suspicion, and soon the fire would be impossible to contain. The walls of a medieval castle could guard armies, but they could never guard secrets. Eleanor and William's forbidden love, once a flicker hidden in the shadows, was now a flame that threatened to consume everything around them. It began with whispers. Servants spoke in the kitchens of Eleanor's nightly absences, her footsteps echoing long after the halls should have been silent. The gardener claimed he had seen her beneath the rose arbor at midnight, cloaked in shadow yet radiant in the moonlight. And more than once, the guards at the tower gate noticed William lingering after his patrols, his eyes fixed on the windows of Eleanor's chambers. Her brother was the first to act. Ambition burned in him, a desire not only to protect the family's honor, but to secure his own place at court. William's popularity among the people gnawed at him like a thorn, and if rumors of Eleanor's love proved true, it would be the perfect excuse to ruin the night forever. He instructed the servants to watch her more closely, and soon, reports came back confirming his suspicions. One night, as Eleanor slipped into the garden to meet William, her brother followed. Hidden among the shadows, he saw them together, her hand resting in his, her head leaning against his shoulder as he whispered words she could barely hear. To any other eye, it might have seemed a scene of innocent affection. But in that moment, to her brother, it was treason. He clenched his fists in rage. His sister's heart had betrayed the family, and William had dared to steal what was promised to another man. The next morning, the household buzzed with tension. Eleanor noticed the stares, the sudden silence when she entered a room. The abbess of the castle chapel spoke to her with an edge in her voice, warning her of the dangers of temptation. Even her father, though he said nothing directly, watched her with eyes that seemed to pierce through her soul. Eleanor's heart pounded with fear, but she could not let go of William. He was her light, her only hope of freedom. For William, the danger was even greater. His fellow knights warned him that the family whispered of dishonor, that his closeness to the lady of the castle was no longer unnoticed. Still, he refused to leave her side. "Let them talk," he said. "Love is worth the risk of swords and shame." But he underestimated how heavy the weight of honor was in the medieval world. Soon, the Count, Eleanor's betrothed, heard the rumors as well. He was a man of pride, and humiliation was a wound he would never allow. To be mocked in whispers, to be the subject of gossip in noble halls, was worse than death. He rode to the castle with fury in his eyes, demanding answers. Eleanor's father, caught between protecting his daughter and preserving his alliance, realized the truth could no longer be hidden. That night, Eleanor was summoned to her father's chamber. The air was heavy with incense, but no prayer could ease her dread. Her father's face was stone, her brother stood at his side, and the count's eyes burned with contempt. They demanded she deny the rumors. They ordered her to swear that William meant nothing. But Eleanor, trembling yet defiant, could not. Her silence was her confession. The storm had broken. Her father's voice thundered, cursing her disobedience. Her brother spoke of shame, of the dishonor she had brought to their blood. The count struck the table, vowing she would still be his bride, but now not out of love, only out of vengeance. William was dragged before them the next day, accused of betraying the trust of his lord. His armor was stripped from him, his honor questioned, his life hanging by a thread. Eleanor cried out for mercy, but mercy was a word her family had forgotten. The scandal was no longer a whisper. It was a roar that echoed through the castle walls, reaching every servant, every knight, every noble who passed through its gates. The forbidden love that had once been their joy was now the blade that threatened to destroy them both. And the punishment for such betrayal in the Middle Ages was never merciful. The judgment came swiftly, for in the Middle Ages honor moved faster than justice. Eleanor's family could not allow whispers of scandal to reach the court. Their daughter's disobedience had not only broken her arranged betrothal, but threatened the alliance on which their power rested. To them, her love was not romantic. It was treason. On the morning after William's arrest, Eleanor was summoned to the great hall. Her father sat in his carved wooden chair, his face as rigid as stone. Beside him stood her brother, smirking with grim satisfaction, and the count, her betrothed, with fury burning in his eyes. The hall was filled with nobles and servants, all eager to hear the verdict. Eleanor stood before them, her hands trembling, her heart pounding like a drum. "You have shamed us," her father declared, his voice cold as winter steel. "You have cast dirt upon our name. You will pay the price." Eleanor begged for mercy, her voice breaking, her eyes filled with tears. She pleaded not for herself, but for William. "He is innocent," she cried. "If there is guilt, it is mine alone. Spare him." But her words only deepened their anger. Her brother sneered, whispering that she was bewitched by the night. The count slammed his fist against the table, demanding vengeance for his humiliation. The sentence was pronounced. William would be stripped of his titles and sent to the front lines of war, a punishment as good as death. Eleanor, for her betrayal, would not be executed, for her family feared the stain of blood upon their honor. Instead, she would be locked away in the tower of the castle, out of sight, out of mind, her life reduced to stone walls and silence. That evening, Eleanor was led to the tower. The heavy door groaned as it opened, the air inside cool and damp. A single narrow window cut into the thick stone let in a sliver of light. Straw was scattered across the floor, and a wooden cross hung upon the wall. It was not a prison of chains, but a prison of eternity. The door slammed shut behind her, the iron bolt echoing like a funeral bell. From her window she could see the courtyard below. It was there, through her tears, that she watched William for the last time. Bound in chains, his head unbowed, he was led away by guards. Their eyes met across the distance, and in that moment, no words were needed. His gaze promised love eternal, hers begged for forgiveness. And then he was gone, swallowed by the road that led to war. Eleanor collapsed to the floor, her sobs echoing against the stone. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Her meals were slipped through a small hatch. Bread, water, sometimes broth. She prayed. She sang softly to herself. She carved words of love into the walls with a shard of stone. Her world became the sound of her own heartbeat and the endless silence of the tower. The people of the castle whispered of her fate. Some pitied her, others scorned her. To the servants, she became a ghostly figure, the lady of the tower, glimpsed only through the narrow window. Children whispered that at night, her voice floated across the courtyard, singing songs of lost love. Meanwhile, rumors spread of William's doom. Some said he had been slain in battle, pierced by an arrow. Others claimed he had vanished, perhaps fleeing to distant lands. No truth ever returned to the castle, only silence. And for Eleanor, that silence was more cruel than any chain. In her solitude, she clung to her memories. She recalled his laughter, the warmth of his hand, the promises whispered beneath the moonlit rose arbor. She believed that love was eternal, even if life was not. And though her tower was her cage, her heart still soared beyond its walls. But as the years passed, hope grew thin. The seasons changed, snow fell and melted, yet the door of the tower never opened. Eleanor's youth faded into sorrow, her beauty into legend. And slowly the world forgot that she had ever been free. The Lady of the Tower had been born, not in grandeur, but in grief. The tower became Eleanor's world. What began as punishment turned into a living tomb, where each stone whispered of lost freedom and every day bled into the next. Yet even in her solitude, she refused to let silence swallow her entirely. If she could not walk in the gardens, she would fill the air with her voice. If she could not hold William's hand, she would hold on to his memory. At night, when the castle grew quiet and the guards dozed at their posts, Eleanor would sing. Her songs drifted from the narrow window, soft at first, then rising into the stillness of the courtyard. They were songs of love and longing, woven from memory and pain. Servants whispered that her voice was not of this world, but of angels. Some claimed it brought tears to their eyes, others said it chilled their bones. The people of the village soon began to gather outside the castle walls, straining their ears to catch the faint melody of the lady imprisoned within. To them, she became a figure of both sorrow and wonder. Mothers hushed their children with tales of the Lady of the Tower, a woman whose heart had been too brave for the world of men. Young girls prayed to her as a saint of forbidden love, hoping their fates would not mirror hers. Inside the castle, her presence was both shame and burden. Her father forbade anyone from speaking her name, declaring that she was no daughter of his. Her brother, ever proud, avoided the tower entirely, pretending she no longer existed. Only a few servants pitied her enough to slip her scraps of parchment and charcoal, with which she carved poems into the walls. "Love is my crown," she wrote once, the words etched deep into the stone, "and sorrow my kingdom." As years passed, the legend grew. They said her hair, once golden, had turned silver before its time, flowing like moonlight down her back. They said her eyes glowed like stars in the darkness, as if her soul looked out beyond the world of mortals. Some claimed that when the wind blew from the east, it carried her songs across the valley, reaching even the villages miles away. But there were darker whispers too. Some said her ghostly figure could be seen at the window, her pale hand resting on the stone as she gazed out into eternity. Others swore that the knight William had not died in battle, but his spirit wandered near the tower, drawn to her voice. On stormy nights, the peasants claimed, two shadows could be seen. One in the tower window, one below, as if still bound by love stronger than death. The count, the man she was meant to marry, never forgave the insult to his honor. Though he married another, he forbade any mention of Eleanor in his household, declaring her cursed. Yet even he could not stop the stories. They spread from castle to castle, court to court, until nobles across the land spoke of the lady who loved too deeply and paid the ultimate price. For Eleanor, the days blurred together. She no longer marked time in seasons but in memories. The scent of roses haunted her dreams. The echo of William's voice never left her ears. Sometimes she believed she saw him in the courtyard below, a phantom clad in armor, waiting for her to descend. Other times, she prayed simply for release. Release from her stone prison, from her sorrow, from the weight of a love that had doomed her. And yet, she continued to sing. Her songs became her legacy, her rebellion, her proof that she still lived, even as the world tried to bury her name. She sang not only for William but for every heart that had ever been broken by duty, every soul trapped by the chains of family and fate. By the 5th year of her imprisonment, she was no longer just Eleanor. She was the Lady of the Tower, a woman of flesh and blood turned into a legend. Her story passed on in whispers and songs, shaping her into something greater than her sorrow. She had been silenced, yet her voice carried further than her captors ever dreamed. And still the tower stood, with its narrow window glowing in the moonlight, while inside, a lonely figure sang to the night. Years slipped by like shadows across the castle walls. Eleanor had entered the tower as a young woman, her heart blazing with love, her face radiant with hope. Now time had etched sorrow into her features. Her once golden hair had turned silver, her hands delicate but worn, her eyes still bright but filled with an endless longing. Yet despite her captivity, she never ceased to sing. Her voice became the heartbeat of the castle, drifting through its halls like a ghost that could not be silenced. The nobles tried to bury her memory. Her father forbade her name at the table, her brother claimed she had died long ago, and the count married another woman, his pride demanding he erase the scandal. But outside the stone walls, her story grew wings. Villagers lit candles beneath the tower, praying for her soul. Minstrels carried her tale across the land, weaving it into ballads sung in courts and taverns alike. The lady of the tower was no longer just Eleanor. She was legend. Inside the tower, her world grew smaller. She no longer dreamed of escape. Her dreams were of William. Sometimes she swore she saw him in the distance, a lone rider silhouetted against the horizon. At night, she dreamed of his hand reaching through the narrow window to take hers. Whether he lived or died in some distant war, she did not know. To her, he was alive in every breath, every song, every prayer. But even legends cannot outlast the weight of flesh. Her body grew frail, her steps slower. The meals brought to her were often left untouched, for she lived more on memory than bread. One winter's night, when the winds howled and the snow blanketed the valley, she sang her final song. It was soft, almost a whisper, a melody of love lost and love eternal. The guards below paused in their duties, hearing the sound drift from the narrow window. It was said the song was so beautiful that even the torches seemed to flicker in sorrow. When the dawn came, her voice did not. The servants found her seated by the window, her eyes closed, her hands resting on the stone sill, as if she had fallen asleep watching the world she could never touch. Her face, though lined with grief, carried the peace of someone who had finally escaped her prison. The lady of the tower was gone. But her story did not die. The villagers refused to let her memory fade. They said that on moonlit nights, her song could still be heard, carried by the wind through the valley. Lovers prayed to her for protection, while parents warned their daughters of the dangers of defying family duty. Poets wrote of her sorrow, musicians set her story to melody, and painters captured her image. A pale woman at a window, gazing out with eternal longing. The tower itself became a place of pilgrimage. Travelers came from distant lands to see the window where she had sung, to touch the cold stone and whisper her name. Some claimed that when they stood beneath it, they felt warmth on their cheek, as though kissed by a ghostly hand. Others swore they saw her silhouette in the window, her hair glimmering like moonlight, her lips parted in song. Centuries passed, kingdoms rose and fell, but the lady of the tower remained. Her voice outlived her captors. Her legend outlived the family that tried to erase her. She became a warning, a symbol, and above all, a reminder that love, though dangerous, could never truly be silenced. And so the tower still stands, its stones weathered, its window open to the sky. And when the night is quiet, when the wind carries its haunting tune, some say you can still hear her, Eleanor, the lady of the tower, singing not of sorrow, but of eternal love.